Hello, and welcome to my lecture on Chapter 10 of the Lifespan book on the social world of adolescence. Learning objectives. There are 2 slides of objectives here. First, explain the instability of adolescent autonomy and the shift from parent to peer dependency. Second, describe the structure and characteristics of peer relationships in adolescence and explain how they shape social identity. Third, describe adolescent views of parental authority and discuss common sources of parent-adolescent conflict, as well as the positive and negative effects of various parental approaches. Fourth, identify elements of schooling that support adolescents' developmental needs and promote academic success across ethnic and racial groups. Fifth, discuss research-based evidence of positive and negative effects of extracurricular activities, jobs, and media consumption on adolescent behavior and attitudes, and suggest guidelines that reduce risks and promote beneficial outcomes. Sixth, analyze various views of risky adolescent behavior, including adolescent reasoning and adult concerns, and suggest appropriate patterns of parenting and intervening in the context of managing risks. And seventh, lastly, weigh contrasting views of adolescent problem behavior, including attitudes about adolescent self-sufficiency and adult societal responsibility. So adolescent autonomy and social identity. During the adolescent period, changes in physical, social, and cognitive capabilities occur. They start to establish independence between 5th and 8th grade, so roughly ages 11 to 14. And this independence involves separation from parents, emotional autonomy, and a second individuation of I'm not my parents, I'm going to figure out who I am, I'm going to figure out what things I do or don't want to take from what my parents have taught me or shown me or exemplified for me, right? Do I want their religion? Do I want their political views? Do I want to dress how they dress or listen to music that they listen to? These kinds of things. And it is a period of their greatest peer influence, and it's especially for risky behaviors. So, thinking about psychosocial stages of change, Erickson, I think I said in the very first lecture that I did that I use that a lot, and it is so prevalent. If you're working with adolescents, you really have to have a lens for thinking about, okay, this child is in a phase of life where they want to fit in, they want to belong, they want friends, they don't know what their identity is, it's very fluid, it's very fragile, it's being figured out. And so because of those things, it is very risky that they could fall into peer groups that lead to risky behavior taking more often, right? If they fall into a group of kids that use drugs or drink alcohol, break the law, gang behaviors, these different things, it could contribute to more risky behaviors and potentially juvenile probation type issues. Resistance to peer influence rises in middle adolescence. So as they get older, they start to resist peer influence a little bit more. It's just at the front end that they might be more at risk compared to later stages of adolescence. As for the peer arena, much more time is spent with peers, and there's a proximity factor to be considered. So they want to spend time with kids that are their same age, share their feelings, have their same educational status. Maybe they go to the same school, they're in the same grade. They might even have shared instability that bonds them, meaning maybe mental health issues, or maybe they're both from parents that are divorced, homes that involve parents that are divorced, or they both experience grief, things like that could bond them. And the peers are also a source of support, comparison, and imitation. So that's to say, not only are they a listening ear, someone that gets me, but they are also people that they're comparing themselves to. Am I as pretty as Jessica? Am I as smart as Brian? Am I as talented at football as the next kid? Am I as good at trumpet as Claire in first chair? Am I, how do I compare? How do I fit in? Do I belong, or am I a black sheep? Right. And imitation is another way that the teens, adolescents can use it's another means by which they can figure out what works in a social setting. Am I accepted when I act this way? Right? If I imitate, if I do these different things, does it get me attention? Does it help me belong? Does it make me more accepted? Right? And so that's why you can see mimicking. And that's why part of why personality disorders can't be diagnosed until age 18, because there are a lot of personality disorder type issues that may just be simply part of being a teenager, right? So that's just something to look at in terms of clinical implications. If you didn't know it already, personality disorders cannot be diagnosed until the age of 18. I might have said that in one of my previous lectures, but in case I didn't, there it is. So this is an image of some statements that were used as a measure in a study done by Fleming on adolescent autonomy, desire, achievement, and disobeying parents between early and late adolescence. It's from Australia. And what Fleming did was took a population of 12 to 19-year-old adolescents from a pool of 7,264 students in order to study adolescents' perception of autonomy. And 11 behavioral autonomy items were elected by the adolescents and used to evaluate the frequency of desire, achievement, and disobeying parents in early 12 to 13-year-olds and late 18 to 19-year-old adolescents. And I just thought that this was a really cool set of things to examine in terms of autonomy. And I honestly would love to have this kept handy to work with adolescents, because I feel like these are really great questions to see where they stand. Are they really defiant? Are they flexible? Are they willing to, compromise, or are they rigid where they aren't willing to bend? And this is absolutely how it's going to be. I don't care. And how are they feeling about these things with regards to the rules that their parents set forth for them, right? So first one, to decorate my room as I wish. Simple enough question, but does a child have that freedom to express self? It could be an indicator for a child having a neglected home, abuse, being very controlled by their parents. No, absolutely not. You're going to have it stay this way, and there's no expression of you allowed in here at all. We're going to keep it blue because that's what I want. We're keeping the color scheme in the house. To choose my hairstyle and dress as I please. Two major ways to express yourself: your hair and how you dress. Right? If a kid is living in a home where they can't even pick their haircut and their mom picks it every time, or their dad picks it every time, that's got some implications potentially for self-esteem, anger, resentment, family, dynamic issues, all kinds of things. To have my own money to spend without supervision. To stay out at night. To stay out of home without having to say where to. To come in and out of the house as I please. You see, some of these things are very adult-like, and it can give you an idea of, is this client being neglected by their parents? There's zero supervision, where there's a permissive parent or an uninvolved parent in the home. I can't imagine a 13-year-old getting to come and go as they please and go where they want without telling anybody. If that's actually happening, that's telling you a lot about their home life. Maybe mom or dad's a workaholic, or there might be addiction in the home. Might be generational parenting style to be uninvolved in that way. Number 7, to stay out of home at weekends. 8, not to spend weekends with the family. 9, to have a girlfriend or boyfriend. I remember in junior high, I had classmates that their mom said they weren't allowed to shave their legs until 9th grade. I will never forget that. So they had hairy legs until 9th grade. And I remember freshman year, I saw them at school and their legs were all shaved, right? They were twins. So that's why I say that. So yeah, do you have the right to shave your legs or do grooming as you please? Even that's not on this list, but that could be a way of expressing autonomy. It could have to do with hair grooming. Number 10, to solve your own problems without the help of your parents. And 11, to have your own ideas on politics, religion, and education, or are you kind of forced into a cookie cutter that you have to be this way to be part of this family? These are different things that could absolutely impact the identity that an adolescent is developing. Right? Okay, structure of the peer network. So it's nested set of peer relationships form concentric circles. The innermost circle is usually a clique of 6 to 10 friends. And then there's a much larger crowd outside of that. So concentric circles, so circle within a circle, within a circle, within a circle type of deal. And on that note, I will say I am a believer in quality friends over quantity of friends. So, if you've got a clique of 6 or 10 friends that you're super close to, that's awesome. And, it doesn't have to be a big old group of 50 people in order for your friendships to be significant. And I think that's an important thing that we can tell our clients. Like, if you've got one or two people that you can authentically share your soul with, that's amazing. Like, I only have maybe 3 or 4 people in my own life that I can call and cry on the drop of a hat. And I know that they're going to receive that in a loving way, in a supportive way. And I don't need to have 50 people I can do that with. And I don't want to have to tell the same story 50 times anyways. So, just normalization of having a small clique with teenagers can be really powerful to empower them. It's okay that you only have a few close friends. That's how adults are too, a lot of the time. The crowd that a teenager surrounds themselves with reflects their social status, values, and lifestyle, right? Are they surrounded by a bunch of skater kids? Are they surrounded by a bunch of band, orchestra, theater, athletes? Are they in student government? Are they involved in art? Are they homeschooled and their group involves club sports or church events? Are they really involved at their church or at their mosque or their temple or what have you? So paying attention to who they spend their time around and why and how much. And actually a very powerful question that I've been using recently with adolescents in therapy when I'm having a hard time getting them to open up or build rapport or just kind of understand who they are, how they are, why they are. I ask them to tell me about their best friend. Why is he your best friend? Why is she your best friend? Why are they your best friend? Help me understand that. And it can clue you into what matters to them within relationships, which kind of can give you a little bit of a cheat code, if you will, on how you can maybe be a better therapist. Because if they tell me he really listens, she really listens, they really listen to me, it means so much that they're non-judgmental. It means so much to me that they just listen and don't interrupt. It means so much to me that whatever, they listen to me talk about anime and how much I love it, right? They can let you know what matters to them in relationships, which can help you build your therapeutic relationship as a counselor. Studies by Steinberg and colleagues found this structure. 20% of that crowd is populars, jocks, moderate academics, and some illicit behavior. 20% druggies, burnouts, less academic delinquent behavior. 30% average, moderate academics. 10 to 15% ethnically defined, varied on academic concerns, and less than 5% are academic achievers with strong ties with teachers. Distinct crowd structures are also found in other cultures. So it just kind of gives you a view of what the crowd can look like, be like, and the different influences that can affect adolescent development that you want to pay attention to whether or not they play a role in the teen that's sitting in front of you. Or even if you're talking to an adult, what was their teen experience like? Because it's going to affect the identity they have as an adult. Whether it's the same or if it's changed, it might have altered the direction, the path that they took. Crowd affiliation. So peer selection involves a choice to participate in group norms and roles. It involves mutual influence and deviancy training among deviant members. Social identity has complexity. There's alignment with multiple groups, right? So like for me in high school, I was on the volleyball team. I had done cheerleading until 8th grade. I did track. I also was involved with club volleyball. And I also worked at a smoothie counter at a gym. So those are a lot of different identities. And I also, as a Christian, I was involved at my church and went to church camps every summer. And upon graduating from high school, I became a huddle leader at FCA camps. And so for me, I had a very, complex, not so complex identity, depending on what somebody else might say. I had alignment with multiple groups that were important to me. But I also was somebody that I liked being friends with anybody that wanted to be nice to me. And so I didn't just be friends. I wasn't just friends with athletes. I wasn't just friends with people on my club teams. I was friends with people in theater and orchestra and band and all these different things because I enjoyed people that were kind. In terms of social identity complexity, there's less in-group, out-group bias and greater personal well-being. So less bias about being inside of a group or outside of a group. And there's a greater focus on me being okay, the self being okay. 4 college groups were identified by Hotmeyer and Midovi, or Midovi, I don't know how you say that. Athletic group, social group, scholastic group, and countercultural. The athletic group oriented towards sports and fitness activities. So that could involve intramural sports, club sports, or the actual university college teams. Social group would be entertainment and recreation, parties, Greek life, clubs, volunteering programs, things like that. Scholastic group would be scholarly with political pursuits. So maybe these are people doing student government, maybe involved with honor societies, things like that. Spelling bees, could even be like mathletes type thing where they do math competitions. I tried to do one of those. I think it was in 8th grade for extra credit for a test, and I did so bad. I still got the extra credit. I competed, but math, I was not strong at it whenever I was in junior high. Better at it now doing statistics, but yeah, scholarly pursuits. Some students really thrive on spelling bee, math competition, Spanish competition, these different kinds of knowledge things. And then countercultural group would be deviant behavior patterns. So these could be people, heavy drug use, selling drugs, just substance abuse generally, doing illegal behaviors, breaking in, destroying public property, graffitiing, stealing, just anything that's illegal would be that countercultural deviant behavior stuff. Role of parents. There's increase in parent-child conflict due to issues of control. So the parent is used to up to the point of this identity development, being in charge and having control. The kid does what they say. They kind of go with the flow most of the time, unless they had a difficult personality or temperament growing up. And now all of a sudden the child isn't listening. They're not being compliant. They won't do what you say. They're very, I'm gonna do what I want to do. Gosh, mom, all this kind of stuff. And so they're having this conflict because they have different ideas of what their rights are and what their responsibilities are. So the teen thinks, I can do what I want. I can go where I want. And mom's like, no, you can't, not under this roof. You're going to abide by my rules because this is my house, right? And you need to do chores in order to live here. No, I don't. I can do whatever I want. I don't have to do anything, right? I don't have to go to therapy. You can make me go, but I don't have to talk. All these kinds of things, right? So that conflict of who's in control of the adolescent's life causes a lot of conflict. Legitimate parental authority is accepted in moral areas, some social conventional areas, but not in the personal domain. Prudential issues involve health and safety, which are viewed as personal domain for teenagers, and it has to do with drinking, smoking, and sexual behavior. It's my body, I'm gonna do what I want. And this is the greatest area of disagreement between parents and teens. Teens become more secretive during this adolescent phase, and they keep their parents less informed about stuff. They only share minimally to reduce friction, but to remain autonomous and to be able to protect that autonomy and to be able to do whatever they want to do and live their life how they want to live it. So that's just something to know. Teens become more secretive. Oh my gosh, they will lie straight to your face in counseling sessions because of wanting to continue to protect that autonomy. They want to potentially impress you and make you proud of them. And so they might lie about their progress in order to get that acceptance from you, to get that approval from you. Because something to know, guys, is that you as a therapist may be the only positive person that a client ever comes into contact with in their life. These people that come into our offices often have issues in one way or another, but sometimes we absolutely are the first positive person in their life. And I will never forget it. I just told this story today, or maybe it was yesterday, to a client about this, where I used to work at the probation department, and every time it was one of my probationers' birthdays, I made the whole group sing happy birthday. And we sang happy birthday to you. We sang the whole song to this one particular probationer. It was his 56th birthday. And we finished singing and he was crying. And I said, I'm so sorry. What's wrong? Did we do something wrong? And he was just like, no, you did nothing wrong. He's like, that's the first time someone's ever sang me happy birthday in my life. 56 years old. It's heartbreaking, right? But it can show you have the power to be an extremely positive impact on someone's life when they come into your office. You have the power to help save a life or to ruin a life, depending on whether or not you know what you're doing. So this stuff is really important to have it understood and known so that you can properly apply it to the benefit of the people that you come into contact with clinically. So yes, be mindful. Your teenagers will lie to your face. You'll ask them if they've been staying sober from marijuana and they just hit a joint before they walked in your office. They lie to your face. Because I've even had teenagers, I'll ask, oh, how's school going? It's going great. And then I get email from mom that they're failing all their courses because they won't go to class. What the heck? Why are you lying to me? Well, I didn't want you to be mad at me. I didn't want you to be disappointed. You hear all these kinds of things. So just be really careful taking what teenagers say with a grain of salt, because they will and they do lie to you. Not all the time, not every single one of them, but higher propensity than most, I would argue, based on my lived experiences as a counselor. Raising adolescents. So parents use monitoring and solicitation, which is not associated with positive outcomes for teens. Monitoring may impede disclosure and may become harmful psychological control. So what's your location? Where are you? What are you doing? Tracker on GPS on the car, like this over monitoring can be damaging and cause trust issues, become deflective, more secretive, these different things. Key dimensions for positive outcomes are parent warmth through responsiveness and control through demandingness. I'm going to balance those things. Authoritative parenting is associated with self-confidence, self-esteem, social adjustment, self-control, and higher achievement. I've talked to you guys about that several times to this point in other lectures. There's better teen sharing and appropriate parent knowledge acquisition when this method of parenting is utilized. Table 10.2 and 10.1 in your book can help you see more about solicitation in parenting methods and differences in parental control characteristics. So I've shown you guys this image before of the 4 different types of parenting. So permissive is the whatever you want style. You can be in charge, very lenient. They avoid confrontation, accepting. There's not very many rules, low expectation. Uninvolved is the I really don't care parenting style. They might not have any rules or few, if at all. They don't have expectations. They're disinterested, neglected, passive. They might have other priorities that are more important than their children to them. This is the parenting style that they don't even know where the kids are. Hey, do you know where the boys are? Let's say they got 2 sons. No, I have no idea. I haven't seen them all day. I can't imagine not knowing where my children are, unless like they're at summer camp and they're doing a bunch of activities. I don't know what they are, but I at least like know they're at camp, right? But the extent where you have zero idea where they are, it's very uninvolved parenting. Authoritarian, bottom right corner, is the because I said so. Because I'm your father and that's what I said. Because I'm your mother and that's what I said, right? This is the parenting style that is very like, or else. High expectations, very clear rules, forceful, autocratic, I'm in charge, not you, very rigid, punishment, limited warmth is used. And the implications for that parenting style, there might be a lot of lying as a result of that to avoid punishment because they're afraid of what their parents are going to do. So they lie about a lot of what they're doing. And I forgot to mention it with the permissive and uninvolved parenting styles. These kids that have those kinds of parents have a higher likelihood for developing cavities, obesity, substance use issue, dropping out of school, things like that, because they don't have rules and expectations that are set forth that they're held to abiding by. And so they're more likely to have unhealthy habits like those. And then authoritative, as previously mentioned, is the ideal form of parenting that parents should shoot for. It's the let's discuss this method where there's high expectations, clear standards, use assertive communication, healthy communication style. You're democratic, right? Flexible, responsive, and warm. Like, okay, so I'm going to explain to you why you can't do that, why that's not allowed, why that's a rule, instead of just saying, because I said so. No, we can't stay out late because there's drunk drivers on the road. It's dark, dangerous, criminal activity happens at night more often than it does in the daytime. And there's a possibility you could get stolen or kidnapped or something on the way home. I just don't want to put you at risk for that, baby. I love you too much. Instead of, Mom, why do I have to come home at midnight? Because I said so. Now get home. Fine. Right. The first one is going to get a lot more understanding. It's also a teaching moment, right? So here's another image that helps you to see the differences. So with this one, you see the demandingness low to high, responsiveness high to low in the middle. And then this one's got responsiveness and warmth, control, strictness, and demandingness, low versus high. And then it's got some different descriptor words similar to the last slide, but it's just another way to look at it. So adolescence in school, early adolescence, there's a decline in academic orientation and motivation. A factor is that changes in school structure and processes lead to it being less conducive to meeting the adolescent's needs. So maybe instead of having one teacher all through first through fifth grade or pre-K through fifth grade, now they have 7 teachers. Things change. Maybe they don't get as much individual attention as they once got or needed. Larger classes in schools, lecture teaching style, there's an emphasis on competition, and there's reduced parent involvement. There's preferred teacher qualities that kids prefer authoritative teachers, like they would want authoritative parents. Kids will never say that they want structure. Oh my gosh, yes, please give me rules and chores. They're not going to say that, but they absolutely need it. And if you think about it, babies, right, are born blank slates. They don't know anything about anything. The language that they learn is taught to them. The social skills that they learn are taught to them. Their ability to do math, speak, do art, draw, all of it, it's all taught to them. And so in an environment that lacks structure, they're going to be more chaotic because there's a lack of structure. But kids appreciate structure. They won't ever say that, like I said, but they appreciate structure because it gives them expectations. They know what they're getting from it. And it gives them bounds within to function effectively instead of trying to figure it out and being all over the place, right? Being given that structure helps them be more successful. And high expectations and high levels of student support are useful. Universal differences are based on belief systems and parental control. Successful students have parent and peer academic support. So yeah, this could be something that a adolescent comes into therapy for. They're really struggling to adjust to junior high. Oh my gosh, elementary school is so much easier. 6th grade is so hard. I have to go all over the place. I keep getting lost, and right, just getting empathetic and in their shoes. What's it like to change from that environment to that environment, right? It's been a long time since maybe we were there, but it's something to think about with the client in front of you. Leisure and work. So there's a link between activities sponsored by school or community and better achievement and overall adjustment. This may promote skill mastery, hobbies, and more. It's a deterrent to binge drinking and drug use. So being involved in the community, whether it's volunteering at the American Red Cross or a shelter, a homeless shelter, a women's shelter, or whatever, a job even, doing something after school is linked to more positive behavior and a reduction in substance use. So based on some studies, there are negative effects of sports participation, which could lead to more use of alcohol in high school and making lower grades. And there's mixed results on research of paid employment for adolescents. It depends on the amount and quality of work and the level of school involvement. It may lead to an increase in problem behaviors like theft, alcohol, drugs, and smoking, lower school achievement, and less school involvement. Differences are noted by race and economic status. Adolescence and media. High rates of media use are linked to obesity, sleep problems, underachievement, and early involvement in risky behaviors. And you can easily see how there's an opportunity for major social comparison on social media, where people always post the most perfect parts of their lives. And they don't always show the worser parts of their lives, which could lead to a misperception of, man, my life sucks compared to everybody else. And that leads to discontentment with their life, their body, all these different kinds of things. And positive outcomes, however, it allows for connection to others and access to information. I don't know if you guys believe it, but I do. Social media totally lends to the spreading of new information like wildfire on lots of things. More screen time activities are associated with the rise of depression and suicide since 2010, especially for girls. Exposure to media violence is linked to aggressive behavior and cognition, and a reduction in prosocial behavior and empathy. Repeated practice shapes the brain and behavior. So repeated exposure to these things affects the brain and the way that we behave, right? The more you're exposed to something, the more you're likely to pick it up. And table 10.3 in your textbook has a meta-analysis of studies on violent video games. Media access to sexual information and interpersonal violence is also problematic, where teenagers might pick up on those behaviors. So they might start looking at porn. They might start engaging in sexual activity younger because they got exposed to it. They might start being abusive towards a partner because they saw it in a movie, or they saw it on TV, or they read about it, or saw a video, or whatever. Risk-taking versus risky lifestyles in adolescence. There's an increase in risky behavior during adolescence that peaks at age 17. Also, the onset of many preventable physical and mental health problems occurs during adolescence. The increase in rates of morbidity and mortality. This increases the rate of morbidity and mortality by 200 to 300%. Statistical trends show lower or decreasing drug use, criminal offenses, sexual behavior, and smoking due to a slow life strategy compared to earlier generations. Peer influence contributes to smoking occurring twice as much if friends are smokers. And there's more conformity to teen group norms like smoking in collectivist cultures, which a collectivist culture versus an individualistic culture. So an individualistic culture is one that is very based on the individual and the one person being important, who am I, versus that collectivist culture is the group is important, the social group is important, right? Egocentrism, development, and risk. Excuse me, my mouth's getting a little dry. So adolescent egocentrism, excuse me, may factor into risky behavior, which supports the idea that it's exciting, but not potentially catastrophic. The emotional system is activated without the benefit of control from the cognitive system. So they perceive low costs and high rewards. The benefits of egocentrism, it's instrumental in relieving maturity gap. It may result in harm, drug dependency, and a risky lifestyle. For parenting, a supportive relationship improves teen disclosure and reduces risky behavior and delinquency. Society's role in adolescent problem behavior then and now in the US, high levels of freedom for adolescents. There's high levels of freedom for adolescents, and there's not adequate support for positive youth development. In the 1920s, the community responsibility to provide supervision, healthy outlets for youth existed. And today there are a few programs, and it's costly to provide them by comparison. Their issue is under reconceptualization. Risky behavior is seen as an individual's problem rather than society's problem. He needs help, she needs help. Instead of we should help him, we should help her, right? Applications helping teens and families. So advocate for authoritative parenting, provide information, support. All have parents that bring the kid in, fix my son, fix my daughter. We can't fix anything. We teach people how to help themselves to be healthier, right? But I often give parents of the adolescent clients I work with a little packet on healthy parenting and authoritative parenting. What is that? And the different styles of parenting and why authoritative is the most effective. And also some tips for rules that they can set and how to support a teenager that struggles with anxiety or depression or whatever. I give them these tools for being a more supportive parent, even if the adolescent may not necessarily look to mom and dad, or mom and mom, or dad and dad in that way that they want support from them. But at least equipping mom and dad, mom, dad, whomever, with ways to be more supportive. You want to link adolescent disclosure to parent support and acceptance. Support and reconnect parents to each other, help parents practice non-reactive communication skills, encourage parent involvement in the teen's education and activities, show up to the play, show up to the game, pick them up, drop them off, blah, blah, blah. Harness technology for the good and take steps for the teen's safety. So harness technology for the good, maybe put parental blockers on the internet so they can't access porn or other problematic websites. It could mean doing the Life 360 app where you can always see where your teen is with their phone, all these different kinds of things. Having the passwords known, things like that. Table 10.4 in your book shows selected family therapies for adolescents. Applications, personal meaning of risk. So perspective taking, therapists try to understand the client's view of risky behavior and the purpose it serves for the teen. So that's something that I always love to talk about with people struggling with addiction, whether or not they're a teenager, is what does alcohol do for you? What does stealing do for you? What is using marijuana? What is using cocaine, methamphetamines, heroin, PCP, crack, cussing your parents out, whatever the problematic behavior is, what does that do for you? Because people do things because they serve a positive purpose in some way, right? Well, I steal because of the adrenaline rush. I use marijuana because my back hurts. I use alcohol because it makes me forget about my crappy home life, right? Figure out what it is the thing that they're doing does for them. What is the purpose that it serves? And you might be able to motivate them more effectively. Let's find something else that meets that need in that way that isn't illegal or dangerous or unsafe for you, right? Let's go to a chiropractor instead of drinking ourselves to the point that our joints are actually really dehydrated, which makes your back pain worse, right? So you build their awareness that there's other things that can help with this that actually fix the problem rather than just mute it with substances or a temporary adrenaline high. There's a variety of risk management strategies available. Adolescents have a general knowledge about risks. You might want to educate them further, do cost benefit analysis, and show them how to do pros and cons of things, which I'm going to show you on the next page. So cognitive challenge for the adolescent client. Formal operational thinking is a challenge because it's just starting to develop it. They are slow to weigh the advantages of their behavior, meaning of risk and possible harm. Intervention involving interview to help clients be reflective. 10.5, table 10.5 in your book shows a risky business interview. And the goal of this is to introduce dissonance, promote reflection, and increase motivation. So this is a cost benefit analysis. It's one that I found done by Smart Recovery, which is, I always forget what that acronym stands for. Google it because it's self-help addiction. No. Smart Recovery, self-management and recovery training group. And what that is a non-12-step alternative to AA, NA, all those things. It's an addiction support group, but it doesn't have a 12-step piece. They do a lot of psychoeducation stuff. It's pretty great. But I love this handout because it doesn't just say positives, negatives, positives, negatives. It says, what are the advantages, benefits, and rewards of using or doing whatever, whether it's marijuana or taking a new job or moving to Texas versus Louisiana or whatever. And then what are the disadvantages, costs, and risks of that same behavior? And what are the advantages, disadvantages, and everything of an opposite decision or a different decision? And I like to empower my clients to think of as many factors as they can for each box to make their decision as clear as possible from a well-rounded perspective. If I only put 2 or 3 things in each box, how am I seeing how different each decision is? I'm really not. But if I try to think of as many as I can, and one box has 5 and another one has 30, that might make it a lot more clear to me, like, whoa, I didn't realize there was so much negative associated with that or positive associated with that. And so few negatives, there's so many few positives. Oops. And so it might motivate them to make a change, right? And the factors I encourage them to think about are intellectual, emotional, spiritual, physical, sexual, financial, relational, familial, educational, vocational, health, legal, safety, parenting, dating, grief, political, economic, social, personality, coping, loneliness, and there's more. There's all these things are part of someone's lived experience. So moving jobs isn't just a financial experience or a financial decision. It's affecting relationships. It's affecting your living situations, affecting how much gas you have to use to drive to work every day. Maybe it's a telehealth job instead of something in an office, that has implications. You don't have to pay for parking or anything. If you moved a new job, you want to think about all this stuff when you're making a decision, because decisions aren't usually one-sided. They're usually multifaceted. And so here's an example of how to use this for someone drinking alcohol. I'll zoom in a little. So this person would be considering whether or not they want to drink alcohol or stay sober, right? So advantages: no back pain, less anxiety and depression, easier to fall asleep, fun, socialization maybe is easier. But disadvantages: costs and risks, liver failure, developing tolerance, drinking and driving is illegal and unsafe. There's lack of control that can become an issue. It's expensive. Wife gets mad. Unhealthy coping skills, getting dehydrated, weight gain, hangovers, oversleeping for things, late to work, and impotence, right? So drinking alcohol too much can lead to erectile dysfunction in a man. So staying sober: advantages, benefits, rewards: no legal risk, anxiety and depression isn't worsened, less conflict with spouse, healthier mind and body, stay better hydrated, weight loss, you're on time for work, no hangovers, and more present with his kids. Disadvantages of being sober: have to deal with back pain. Everyone thinks he's lame for being the only sober one. Look at the difference there. I can't imagine someone not feeling more motivated to go for sobriety looking at these differences, right? And I could keep going on these charts, but these are just examples, right? So this can be used for comparing whether you want to apply to McDonald's or Taco Bell, be a flight attendant versus a therapist. Like, what are the pros and cons, disadvantages, advantages of all these things that can help people make better decisions? So adolescents are just starting to develop the ability to think this way, and that's just something to be mindful of as you enter into the counseling world, working with them on decision-making processes. Applications: adolescent suicide. It's the leading cause of death among young people. You can see table 10.6 in your textbook for adolescent suicide risk across cultures. There's inconclusive evidence about predicting from risk factors. Risk factors include prior self-injury, prior suicide attempt, mental health diagnoses, prior psychiatric hospitalization. Other risk factors: if there is a history of suicide in the family, that's also a risk factor. If there's a history of mental health issues among family members, that is a risk factor. Trauma is a risk factor, okay? And then a new factor: high levels of screen time during a sensitive period of development. It's interesting to know. So too much time on technology during sensitive periods of development could be an implication for suicidality. So here is an image I found from muskageephoenix.com of some risk factors for suicide. So it just expands a little further on the risks listed on the last slide. So history of substance abuse, physical disability or illness, losing a friend or family member to suicide, ongoing exposure to bullying behavior, a mental health condition, recent death of a family member or a close friend, access to harmful means, relationship problems, and previous suicide attempts. So these are all things that, you know, you could ask about during your psychosocial assessment with a teenager. You know, have you ever had these experiences? Has anybody in your family, or have you ever lost someone to suicide? These are things that could affect whether or not the person in front of you might ever attempt. And application: it takes a village. Families, schools, and the whole community involvement are needed to help grow, develop the adolescent. General guidelines: we take our social and cultural context seriously. Don't blame it all on the adolescent brain. You can't just chalk it up to, oh, just a teenager. No, they're a creature that is interactive with their environment, which can absolutely have implications for mental health and maturation. See adolescent problem behavior as a means to an end. Help construct healthy, attractive alternatives to help adolescents meet developmental needs, including non-traditional options. And you can look at table 10.7 in your book on for risk taking in adolescence. It talks about examples of functions and damaging and healthy practices that can be used. All right, time for some questions. So chapter 10 questions. Data on peer affiliation show the power and influence of adolescent crowd membership. The percentage of high school students in the US who belong to crowds characterized by high academic achievement is approximately which of the following: 15, 10, 5, or 2%? 5%. According to research, what dimension of parenting is most closely tied to adolescent self-confidence and social competence? Parent responsiveness, demandingness, permissiveness, or dismissiveness. Parent responsiveness. Numerous studies have been conducted to determine whether there is a relationship between playing violent video games and aggressive behavior. According to studies, what are the effects of playing violent video games? No increases in aggressive behavior, increases in aggressive behavior across cultures, increases in aggressive behavior of youth in Canada, but not in the US, and increases in behavior of youth in the US, but not in Japan. Increases in aggressive behavior across cultures. Popular crowds in American high schools typically exhibit which of the following characteristics? Heavy drug use and delinquent behavior, some drug use or other illicit behavior, high academic achievement, or strong ties with teachers. Some drug use or other illicit behavior. Which of the following descriptions characterizes the changes in American society's attitudes toward adolescent risky behavior from the 1920s to today? In the 1920s, it was not seen as a serious problem, whereas today risky behavior is seen as a serious problem. In the 1920s, risky behavior was seen as a problem that could be addressed by social programs like community activities for adolescents, whereas today we tend to see the problem as within the individual. In the 1920s, risky behavior was seen as a problem with the individual who needs treatment, whereas today we tend to see the problem as one that can be addressed by social programs. Or D, in the 1920s, there was greater concern about risky behavior than there is today, because risky behavior is much rarer now. A, B, C, or D. B, in the individual. Participation in after-school activities sponsored by school or community organizations is unrelated to academic achievement, detrimental to academic achievement, positively related to academic achievement, or positively related to social competence, but negatively related to academic achievement. Positively related to academic achievement. Some parents of adolescents are going through their own perilous transition. What proportion of American parents report strong feelings of powerlessness, rejection, and personal regret when their children become adolescents? Less than 5%, about 40%, more than 60%, or almost 80%. About 40%. Which of the following is most likely to increase adolescents' disclosure of information to parents? Psychological control that helps the adolescent face consequences of risky behavior. Hands-off approach that communicates trust in adolescent judgment. Monitoring of adolescent activities and phone calls, or warm supporting parental relationship with the adolescent. D, warm supporting parental relationship with the adolescent. And last question. For an adolescent engaging in risky behavior, alcohol use, for example, one strategy that counselors can use to introduce dissonance into the discussion. Before a counselor can do so effectively, she must, or they must provide factual data on the risks of alcohol use, interview the teen about his or her beliefs about risky behavior, establish a reward system for good behavior, or determine the extent of the adolescent's participation in deviant behavior. B, interview the teen about his or her beliefs about risky behavior. And lastly, some questions for the comments. What concerns do you have about working with the parents of an adolescent? Why? And 2, what do you think would be some special considerations when working with juvenile youth? Please feel free to leave your answers in the comments below. Thank you for attending my lecture on Chapter 10.